Welcome back into the Percussive Arts Society Georgia chapter interview series. My name is Andrew Bennett, and we've been getting to know some of the awesome percussionists and drummers across the state, from private educators to collegiate professors and more. Before we get into it, I do want to remind you, if you're not active in PAS, please consider signing up or reactivating your membership so that you can be part of the community. And when we're able to do things like percussion days in the future, that goes a long way to making those happen. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today. He's the Director of Percussion Studies at Mercer University and a good friend of mine now. We have Dr. Marcus Reddick. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Andrew. How's it going?
Doing well, doing well. Most people who don't know, and most people won't know, I went to Mercer, so I've known you for many years. I studied with you through high school, so this is a little more personal interview for me. And I said before, I probably know the answer to a lot of these questions anyway, but our viewers and listeners don't, so I'll ask them anyway.
Well, maybe I'll make up some answers and see if you can guess what I'm going to say. Yeah, I'm
That's
kidding.
fine. If this turns into two truths and a lie, all the more interesting.
Hey, why not? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 8 years. You studied with me all the way through high school and all the way through college, and it was 8 great years, man. It was we had a good time. We did a lot of different stuff. We had a lot of creative stuff. We had a lot of moments where we broke from the norm, and yeah, a lot of great times. I miss them, that's for sure. But you're
That's true.
killing it now, so that's awesome.
I appreciate it. And I think some of that breaking the rules and doing some abnormal stuff, that's going to come into some of our questions later. So I think we'll have a fun opportunity. But just so we can dive in, I always ask to share a little bit of how you got started, if there was either a pivotal teacher or a moment that made you decide, I want to do this for a living, and then where you went from there, college, after college, all that kind of good stuff.
Cool. Well, I came from a very musical family. My mom and my dad were both insanely musical people, though neither one of them could hold a tune. My dad had probably the best set of ears I've ever had seen or been around on a person. It was unbelievable. He grew up in the big band era, so his main thing was jazz and swing. Wasn't much of a fan of bebop or what they call modern jazz, but he did love all of what he would call the classics. My mother was on the other side of the coin. She loved Maria Callas and opera and symphonic music. And so it's kind of cool being brought up in that household. I'm the youngest of six boys. I had everything going on. Not all six lived at the house at one time. At any one time, there was, I think the most that ever lived there was four or maybe five. Anyway, um, as they were all older, they were listening to everything from John Denver to Black Sabbath to the Mahavishnu Orchestra. So it was quite the musical pastiche in our house. So it was great. I mean, I got to be exposed to a lot of different styles of music at all times. Around the fourth grade in my elementary school, way back in Colorado, um, there was a music class, and I met my first music teacher. Her name was Karen Harris, and it's kind of interesting. About a year and a half ago, I actually found her on Facebook, and so she's still alive, and we've chatted every now and again, and it's just super cool because she was one of those amazing music educators where she just inspired you to want to do it. I mean, if you wanted to do it, it was there for her, and she loved it, and she pushed you as far as you needed to go, but she didn't push too hard. It was really kind of an interesting vibe. But so I got started off in fourth grade band with her. Obviously went through middle school, and did some stuff there. I just kept going in music, finding more and more and more of what I wanted to do there. In high school, I had a really great band director who actually taught my older brother too. My older brother played saxophone. But this band director, he really super cool, really into jazz. And so he kind of pushed that with me a little bit more because I'd kind of started to go that way, wanting to play jazz. And so let's see, that got me through high school. There was interesting, my professional life actually started because of, they had a career day at my high school where it was like 75 different occupations that were coming into the school, and they would do little class sessions where the students from all over the school, it was like a career fair day at my high school, and you could go in and just pick these people's brains, and they could talk to you about whatever they were in their profession. And there was actually two musicians in the class, that came in. They sat in on the band room, and so I said, "Yeah, I want to go check it out and talk to them." And guy's name was Larry Henley. He was a bass player. He was an amazing jazz bass player. And Lenny Charles, who was a guitar player, and he was another one of those just really amazing guitar players. And they were the typical musicians. They showed up and they had their coffee and they had the shades on, and you could tell they were out gigging late the night before. But they were there to promote some education with stuff. So I went in and listened to their shtick, and one of the guys that was in the session with us said, "Hey, you guys need to hear this guy play," and pointed to me, and they just kind of laughed it off like, "Ha ha ha ha," whatever. And right after our session was lunch, and so they said, "Yeah, yeah, sure. Hey, so we have lunch after this. You want to sit down and play a little bit?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So sure enough, we did, and the three of us, we played through the entire lunch hour. We had a blast. We just had so much fun. And so in the old days, they wrote their name down and their number on a napkin. There wasn't any business cards or anything like that. So Larry said, "Hey man, give me a call and give me your number." So I gave him my number. This is also before the days, because I was still like 16 years old. It was kind of weird. You're giving an adult your phone number, but you know, so he called me up that very next day. I think it was the next day, and he said, "Hey man, we got a gig for you." And I thought, gig? A gig? What is this thing called a gig? And it started my relationship with Larry and Lenny, and we played as a trio down at a little club in downtown Denver called the Paris on Platt Street, and we played there forever. That club no longer exists. We started playing all over downtown Denver and the El Chapultepec and Jazz at Jack's and all these other little places that were. So it was a lot of fun. Off I go to college, and so I did the college thing. And the college thing was an interesting one because in my high school, we did some stuff with like concert band and symphonic band and wind ensemble, those types of things. But I hadn't really ever so much been exposed to like that side of I could sight read snare drum and stuff, play some bass drum, play some crash cymbals, or so I thought. And if I was given, "Here, you got to play the mallet part because it's got 16th notes in it," what? That's crazy. I'd have to write all the notes in because I didn't really know that stuff. So I mean, that side of my musical education was never really fostered at all until I got into college, where where I was quickly put in my place. Like, well, okay, so spell a D major triad, and it was like a D, what's that? D major triad? Oh, okay, what is that? Right. So I took the classes and did the stuff there, but that was just, to me, that was just fascinating, and I love that stuff, and I took to it like a moth to a flame, and just quickly learned that stuff, and it started to really push all sides of my percussion background. So I mean, I really got interested in mallets. My main teacher is a guy by the name of Steve Rabine, who was a really great vibraphone player. He picked me up real quick when we were going to play some stuff with his little fusion quartet and quintet, and we had a blast. We played all over the Midwest. Well, not really so much the Midwest with that group. I played in another group called the Mighty Jailbreakers, and we did some stuff, around Nebraska and South Dakota and Minnesota and stuff, and it was a blast. We had a good time. So all the way through my undergrad, I was playing a lot and fostering that environment, getting my concert stuff together. Then when I did my master's degree, I went to study at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas with Dean Gronemeyer. And part of the reason why I wanted to study with him was because I knew that if I was going to do my master's degree, I wanted to do it with somebody that was really heavy into mallets, because I knew that that side of my playing wasn't as strong as I needed it to be. So I went to a guy that he was like the contemporary, he's the new guy. He was this. He was really powerful in what he was doing. And he's been publishing some articles, and he was a new guy out of University of Arizona and whatever. And so I went and studied with him. And that to me was another eye-opening experience. He not only took my mallet playing to like just ridiculous levels, but he took, everything, in the concert, we played with the Las Vegas Pops, played with the Nevada Symphony Orchestra, played with all kinds of stuff there. But that was when I first started to really, I'd played a lot of gigs doing stuff, but this is when I started to see it as like I could live doing this stuff, not as I'm going to play these gigs, these kind of, medium to high profile gigs and whatever. I'm going to take some of the small, neighborhood type gigs too that are going to pad my income so I can start to do this. And, he kind of really, really made that an idea that I could really wrap my head around. So, and in Las Vegas, I had the opportunity to play a lot of drum set. I had lots of church gigs that I could play. I played up and down the strip. I played all over. I played pretty much every hotel on the strip, played, all kinds of shows. And it was great. I mean, I had a great time doing it. I had a great time playing all the stuff and, meeting all the people. And I had a great relationship with everybody there. And obviously the musical network that's in Las Vegas is ridiculous. So, you get to know a lot of people really fast. From there, I went to the University of Kentucky to get my doctorate, and I stayed with Jim Campbell. And Jim was the business side of it for me. And we had a great time. I mean, Jim and I, we kind of, I came from a more performance-based side, and he came from a more business-based side. And so we had our headbutts and whatever, but we managed to figure it out. And I think, I know he made me stronger. And I'd like to think that maybe I made him a little bit stronger too, that's kind of the way these things have to work. But yeah, so I mean, I've had some great teachers. I've been blessed, that I've had incredible teachers that have given me a variety of information. And that's kind of what, one of the reasons why one of my big things at Mercer is I don't necessarily I always try to tell students after they're done with their degree with me, go elsewhere, because not that I don't have more to teach you or that you don't have more to learn from me, but I want you to have kind of the same experience that I did, because I mean, growing up in Denver, then I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and then I went to Las Vegas, Nevada, then I went to the University of Kentucky. Not only are those in 4 completely different time zones, you're getting 4 different percussion educations. So you're having to think on your feet at all times, and it just makes you incredibly well-rounded, I think, anyway. So I take that kind of philosophy into my teaching that, I want to try to, not push you away from me, because I obviously want everybody to come hang out at Mercer. But I definitely want, I try to facilitate as much of that, get the global perspective as much as you can.
Very cool. And since you're kind of talking about that, there's 2 questions we're going to have with this. And the first I'm going to go ahead and ask, because what's cool is seeing your screen, I can see behind you, we've got a few pictures of Frank Zappa, but then on the other wall, we've got a marimba and a Vic Firth poster and a Mike Balter book. Those are very different worlds. And to me, it's a little unfortunate that the percussion and the drum world are often very separate. Somebody who studies and loves the Dave Weckels and the Vinnie Colaiutas and the Steve Gaz of the world may know nothing about the Keiko Abes and the Floyd Duffs and such.
Right, sure.
And I know, again, because you've talked about, you started out playing drum set, that was a love of yours, and then you did percussion in school. But a lot of people either do one or the other. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important for the drummer to learn some percussion and for the percussionist to learn some drums, even if it's not your passion?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. For me, when I play, regardless of what I play, there has to be passion involved. I mean, it's one of those things where you can play technically and you can play all the notes on a page and you can play all the rhythms on a page and you can play all the dynamics and all the shapes and everything just perfect, but you're not really making any music. I mean, there's got to be some passion behind it. So for a guy that started out with a drum set thing, we learn from our drum set mentors or even from the guys we just listened to that when you play drum set, groove is above everything. You can have Eric Moore type hands, just flying all over the drum set, Dennis Chambers type stuff, where you're just flying and it's just ridiculous speed. But if you don't have the groove to back that up, it doesn't really matter. You're not really going to work, so groove is the stuff that's going to pay the bills. So you got to figure out how to make what is groove, so everybody's definition of groove is going to be a little bit different. How you move with the music, how you bop with the music, how you feel the music. But somehow there's got to be an internalization of those X's and dots and all this stuff that's on a page. And you've got to internalize it and turn it into something that's way bigger than those X's and dots on a page. Now, if we come from the orchestral person, a lot of times when I play orchestral music, I groove with it, and some people, look at me kind of, especially the purists, kind of look at me like, you're not supposed to move. You have a tuxedo on, and you have that tambourine part, and I'm sitting there waiting for it, and I'm kind of bobbing my head, rocking out, a little Capriccio Espanol or something, and then all of a sudden, bang, I'm gonna hit my note. But I'm gonna get it every time because I'm grooving with that music, because I'm internalizing it and making it. I want to be in the music. I don't want to play the music. I don't want to be this person that just takes the paintbrush and paints it. I want to be inside of it. I want to make sure that I'm inside of it at all times, regardless of whether I'm playing classical music or I'm playing Indian music or I'm playing jazz music or rock music or funk music or heavy metal music or country music or whatever. I want to really try to put myself in a position where I am the music, or I'm trying to be as my part of it. I won't say as big of a part as necessary, because that's just egomaniacal, but my part, what is my part? And so it always comes back to that. I have to immerse myself into it. So it's not just, oh yeah, I got to play these straight eighth notes, tick, 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 tick. Yeah, you can train anybody to do that, but can you make those eighth notes sound exactly right, with really good depth, with really good emphasis, with really good groove, with really good, to where you hear it and you go, man, those eighth notes were fantastic. I don't know if you got to see that. Todd Zuckerman just put up a thing. One of his favorite drum fills was from the Dave Maddock thing with Peter Pumpkinhead. And if you heard the fill itself, the fill doesn't sound like much, but he's absolutely right. That's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like 1, 2, and 3 was basically the bass. No, I can't remember what it was now. I think that was it. The bass drum pattern that was in there. And he's absolutely right. If you listen to that song, that one little measure stands out as special. Not that because he played, listen to that weird little 9 tuplet that he played over, blah, blah, blah. No, because he moved the bass drum over just a little bit to spice up the music, because obviously that's how he felt like he was going to have to do it.
Very cool. I dig that. And I think we can all agree kind of what you mentioned in the beginning about moving, even when you're playing orchestra stuff. We've all seen percussionists either in an orchestra or in a percussion ensemble that don't know that. And even though I think it's still fantastic to watch those players, I don't think it's you across like a video screen. If you're watching a YouTube video, it's hard to feel what they're doing when they're standing like that. And you wonder, can they sleep with their eyes open, or are
exactly.
So
wake up. Yeah.
I would love to see, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would agree. I would love to see that drum set world and percussion world kind of come together without losing their core, of course, and their respective values, but find some percussionists who can dance a little bit, and then find some drummers who know more about composition or thinking melodically, or anything that you might think percussion can teach a drummer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and whenever you can cross streams, I'm thinking of Steve Smith when he dove into the world with tabla. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Oh yeah. Zakir Hussain?
Gosh. What's that?
No. It wasn't Zakir Hussain.
Zakir Hussain, yeah.
It is? Okay.
He kind of did some stuff with Zakir Hussain, and so Steve Smith kind of dove himself into the Indian, the tal and the tabla and the tabla rhythms, and talking about T-high and talking about chakradars and all this other stuff. And you were at Mercer when we had I think they were called the Rough Riders at that point, and now they're called Talavia, or now they're called the Rough Riders. Anyway, an amazing Indian group that came to Mercer, and they got to hang out with us for a while, and they were trying to teach us some of these rhythms. And the complexity behind those rhythms is it's amazing, and it's so beautiful when you watch them do it. When we do it, it's very, we're still learning it, but they've embodied this whole concept that we're talking about right now. And so Steve Smith took the tabla stuff, or stuff you can play on mridangam or whatever that stuff, and he put it on drum set. And so now all of a sudden, those rhythms are now relevant to our Western world. So he kind of crossed that bridge and said, you know what, let me bring my stuff to you. You bring your stuff to me. We'll figure it out, and then we'll play some stuff together. So him and Zakir Hussain have done, and I don't know if they're still doing it, but they have done, like many little drum off type things, battles where, Zakir Hussain, who's just ridiculous, plays his tabla. Steve Smith plays drum set, and they're still doing, Steve Smith is still being very true to the rhythms. He's not just doing Steve Smith rock and roll drumming type stuff. He's playing Indian rhythms. He's figuring out the T highs. He's doing, the tall, depending on, if they're in 5-beat cycles or 9-beat cycles or 13.5-beat cycles. He's following that as well. It's really, really, really fascinating stuff.
Could not agree more. I love watching those videos as well. This will segue into our next discussion, where I do want to ask you about your current teaching position there at Mercer. Again, I'm going to know a lot about this since I got to experience it for technically 8 years, since that's where I studied with you through high school. But if you want to talk a little bit about starting there and kind of the way that you shaped the program, and then a little bit about how do you bring some of that eclectic love of everything into the percussionist who may not be into everything, but kind of needs to know everything.
Okay. When I first got the job here, I was hired by a man who was really excited about it, because before me, there was a couple of like part-time guys that had come in, and they'd done some adjunct work and did some like private lesson teaching or whatever, but he wanted to have a percussion studio, which I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And so we had several conversations about how he wanted that to roll. And they hired me, and it was great and was fantastic. And we started down that path, and then he got fired. Yeah. So then things kind of, I won't say stopped, but definitely slowed down and changed direction, which was fine. I'm all about changing direction. They were looking to kind of build the School of Music up, and now they're trying to keep it, at a certain level, a certain number of students, a certain number of musicians in the school, which is fine. So basically what I'm trying to do is because there was only like part-time guys there was very little percussion equipment. There was very little stuff there. They had basically no library at all. So my job was to build up the library, which, over the past, I've been there 14 years now, I guess, 14 years, 15 years, 14 years now. Yeah. Can you believe that? That's crazy. 14 years. When you think about what, so 14 years, we built up a pretty decent library there. Right before I was hired, they went from part of the College of Liberal Arts to a School of Music. So they had their own budget, which was obviously less than when they were part of the entire liberal arts school. So there was that to kind of deal with too. But my whole thing with that is, because we're a smaller school, I try to incorporate as much stuff as I possibly can. Because we're one of those NASM certified schools, we have to teach percussion majors, mallets, timpani, keyboards, multi-percussion. There's nothing in there that's drum set, but every one of my students takes at least 1, if not 2 or 3 semesters of drum set, depending on their level of ability, and their desire to do so. But, it's like I tell everybody, name one person who makes their living solely off of playing marimba. You can't do it, right? You have the Evelyn Glennies of the world, and you have the Keiko Abes of the world, but Keiko teaches in Tokyo. And Evelyn Glennie plays with orchestras, not just marimba. She plays multi-percussion, she does this, and she writes, and she's a master of all this stuff. So drum set is what's going to be your baby. So just by doing that, I think it opens up a lot of people's fear box, for lack of a better word, because I know a lot of people that the first time they sit down to play drum set, they're petrified because they have to move their feet and their hands at the same time, or different times, or independently. And how do they do all that stuff? But one of my teaching philosophies, as you very well know, is slow it down, break it down. So, I take that whole concept and just apply it to drum set, or I apply it to snare drum, or I apply it to timpani, or I apply it to everything. So it doesn't have to be this scary monster, right? It's something that we start off with and make it real basic. You do one thing here, then you do one thing here, you do one thing here. And then maybe in a percussion ensemble piece, I know that maybe they're studying some of this independent stuff. So I'll look at a percussion ensemble piece for an opportunity for them to take that piece and look at it completely different. Maybe it's not hi-hat and snare drum they're playing this time. Maybe this time it's cowbell and woodblock, or jingle bells, or whatever. And so they're having an opportunity to work on that same type of stuff where there's independence there. Whether they know I'm doing that or not, I have no idea. But I just try to create opportunities for them to advance their ears more. Because I think sometimes we get stuck into doing more traditional percussion ensemble literature, especially in smaller schools, because with smaller schools you have fewer numbers. I was very lucky to study at the University of Kentucky, where they have like 35 percussion majors. And then so there's probably and there's people that want to play in the percussion ensemble that aren't majors, and I'm sure Jim will let them do it. But with 35 people, you kind of have your pick of who you want to play at what part. So a lot of times they'll just use like the marching band drum line, which in and of itself at University of Kentucky is killer. They save those, the non-majors, and there's even some majors in the marching band as well, but they have non-majors that go in there. But I try to pick pieces that are traditional percussion ensemble stuff. I try to pick pieces that are weird percussion ensemble stuff that maybe the audience won't get. But I also try to challenge the performers to think outside the box. There was a piece that we played with you where we dribbled basketballs. And you have to really not just use your ability to think of music because you have a basketball. You have to fit your ball in. So you have to think about how you're throwing it down and how you're doing this and how you're doing this. Well, guess what? Everything that you're doing in there relates directly back to your stroke, relates directly back to every bit of musicality that you can put into a marimba piece, or you can put into a timpani solo, or you can even put into a funk groove that you're playing. It all has to deal with just being able to adapt to this new stuff. And that's what I try, and I'm probably more successful with some people than others. Just like every teacher in the world, but I try to open that up to everybody as much as I can.
Very cool. Very cool. So the final thing, this will kind of tie in with that, and then we'll get to some more kind of particular questions for you, is that right now, of course, part of why we're doing this series is everybody's still been stuck at home kind of since March. The world's opening up a little bit more, but it's still a little strange. And one of the biggest issues with that is high school juniors and seniors looking at colleges can't just go take a tour the way that they used to. So, it's a lot about, how do I get to know what's going on? What am I going to experience if I go to this college? So thinking about how things have changed during the time of COVID and in quarantine, are there some changes that you found that are working that you'll hang on to in the future? And then what's maybe the biggest positive that's come from all of this?
Well, before I get into that, I should have said this much earlier, but I need to say this to you. Thank you for doing this. And the reason why is because, so one of the big positives that's coming out of this is, as musicians, we're creative people. You're a creative guy. You came up with this idea where I'm going to introduce larger masses to people within our percussion community in my home state that are doing this stuff. And I want to thank you for, taking the reins on this one and saying, hey, this is going to be good. This, and you're pushing PAS. So we're getting positive vibes out there. Yeah. It's a time where everybody's kind of locked into their house, and, we're kind of scared about going out, and venues are closing all over the world, not just here. Musicians are losing money hand over fist because there's no jobs to play. We're really lucky, at the university level, because we're still teaching. But that creativity is what is going to pull us through. And the fact that you're doing, with help from PAS, you're doing an interview series where you're interviewing some people. Well, guess what? Your name is getting out there. Our name is getting out there. The people in Georgia's name is getting out there. The percussionists in Georgia are getting out there. We're creating positive vibes, because you know what? Music is all about peace, love, and all that happiness, right? So when you're talking about a junior or a senior, yeah, they can't really they can't really do the Mercer thing, or any schools. They can't really do the tours as they used to, but there are still virtual tours that are starting to pop up all over the internet now, to where you can get a pretty good idea of what your dorm room is going to look like, what your science classroom is going to look like, what a practice room will look like, what your residence hall will look like, whatever, just because they're doing much more stuff and much more thorough and in-depth things with virtual tours, which is really, really cool. We're all kind of in the process of, when this thing hit in March, we're so used to teaching face to face. It's really hard to teach over Zoom. And I mean, one of the things that we've talked about extensively, I've talked about it with my colleagues, and people across the country, across the world, is it's really difficult to get that, because when you're in the room with somebody that's passionate about it, you feel it. And it's really hard to get that feeling to come across on a video screen. But we're coming up with new ways. We're constantly trying to push the envelope of what is creative, and we're having virtual performances. I think I told you the last time we spoke about that the thing that we were with University of Kentucky, where we played ionization. I'm still waiting for the video of that. I can't wait to hear that. I think that's going to be great. But I'm constantly trying to talk to. I'm getting into some of the schools in the area, to where I'm really glad to see that they're starting to have like a percussion class in a lot of the schools. This was something that even, heck, I don't even know if you had that in high school. Did you?
Nope.
Yeah, just a dedicated hour or 45 minutes or 50 minutes of just where somebody gets to work on percussion ensemble, percussion techniques or something. And so I'm going into these schools virtually and talking to them, and some days I have an agenda, but some days I don't, because sometimes I just want to say, so how are you guys feeling? But what, aren't you supposed to talk to us about drumming? It's like, yeah, of course, but let's get, let's get to know each other on this level, because there is this piece of glass that's between us. Let's just try to make it happen. And then we talk about drumming stuff, and so they can start, talking about, oh yeah, well, what happens when my left hand does this, or when I'm doing this drum set thing, and because we have some of the technology, and the technology is getting better every day, we're able to, I can play my drums down here, or play my marimba over here, and do some stuff and work with them, where they can play back to me, and we can start to have that interaction. Couple that with the fact that right now we're on a Zoom call. You can record this whole thing, and then you can send it to me, and then I can talk to you via Zoom, and we can both watch your performance. So now you're actually getting something that we all wish we had. And yes, I'm including you on this one, where you actually watch yourself perform and have somebody go, okay, this is good here. Check out this phrasing here. Look at your hands here. Drop your hands down a little bit here. Here how your bass drum's a little too loud. Here how this is a little too loud. Where it's real-time feedback, watching yourself do what you want, which is really cool, because, I was always a big fan of, when you're playing drum set, try to imagine yourself walking out in front of the drum set and listening to yourself. I think I might have actually told you that several times. But now that's absolutely possible, because we have the technology to where this recording can happen. Then I can call you and say, okay, let's watch this video, and we'll fix this, and we'll fix this, or fantastic job. Look at your phrasing here. This is awesome. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. So yes, it's stifling in a little ways, a couple different ways, but I think there's a lot of advantages to it. So, some of the positives are we're really being forced to amp up our creativity, and having to think outside the box, which is one thing that artists in general, not just musicians, but artists, have been forced to do for a long time. But when the world is normal, whatever that means, we take it for granted maybe a little bit to think outside the box. The real innovative people do, and that's fantastic. And the big go-getters that go out and they're creating all kinds of, world peace and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I think every artist is now, they're being called. It's like, look, we can't do it. We have to be creative. And I think that for the most part, we're all answering the call pretty well, and in a time that people are being locked down in their houses. I'm sitting here having a really great conversation with you, and, we're 70, 80 miles away from one another, and it's real time, and it's cool. And, hopefully people are going to get some stuff out of it.
That's a very cool sentiment that I like to hear, where when you're put into an adverse situation, you have to find a creative way out of it. And speaking of which, I know I'm not going to ask you to tell this full story, but I know in your past, you had a time when you had a pretty crazy accident where you couldn't play for a long time, and you had to basically find your way back. And I know a lot of people in our industry who, going through something similar, they might have just stopped. They might have found a regular day job and stopped playing music. So if you could maybe talk a little bit about, how do you mentally and physically come through such adversity to come back and have a full-time college gig, be able to tour and play in bands and everything?
Well, yeah. And just so you know, my heart goes out to everybody who's ever had any one of these career ending or possibly career ending injuries. The injury of which you're speaking is I had these two fingers ripped off on my right hand 20 years ago, and it was a really scary moment. I shouldn't say moment. I should say few years. I had multiple operations to attach and reattach blood supplies and stuff, and they had to put all these titanium rods in my hand to make it do what it does now. I have no feeling in it, but the physical toil obviously was huge. But maybe even more so than the physical was the mental and emotional, because as musicians and artists, we're creative people, so we have to invest emotionally too. We can't just invest the physical side of it. We have to invest emotionally, otherwise we're not really doing what we say we're doing, which is creating art, right? So um it took a little while. I mean, obviously there was moments of complete numbness, but every day I just kept waking up and telling myself, "You're going to play again," because I was told by my surgeon when I went in to have this fixed, whatever that means. He told me, "I don't think you're ever going to play drums again." And I've always been the youngest of six boys. I've been challenged since I was a kid. So and I said, okay, I'm going to take that as a challenge. And I put it in the back of my head and I said, no, I'm going to prove him wrong. This was one of the greatest hand surgeons in North America, or maybe the world. He said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to save your fingers or your hand, because by that time it had been several days and there was lots of blood loss. And you don't need to hear this on this particular thing, but the story. So he didn't think I'd ever play again because I wouldn't have the whatever. So after they reattached the blood supply and they did this, that, and the other thing, they got it to where I didn't look too deformed. I looked deformed for a little while, and then it was one of those things where I had to believe, and there's a certain faith that has to happen within somebody that goes through something like this, because if you don't have it, the depression can be crippling, and it's unbelievable. It really just grabs hold of you. So basically what I did was I just kept saying, no, you're wrong, I'm going to be right, I'm going to play, I'm going to play, I'm going to play. I didn't know at what level. I had no clue at what level. At this point I still hadn't finished my doctorate. I was done with all the coursework. All I had to do was defend my dissertation. So, but as you know, my dissertation was on six mallet independence for marimba, kind of a big thing to include these two big fingers, right? So I still had to play a lecture recital. So I had to play with six mallets with this stuff. So that was another one of my driving forces. It was one of those things where, I always am giving myself something to achieve, goals. You always have to put goals out there. And you're right. You're absolutely right when you say that a lot of people would just quit. And I'm not going to say that I'm better than anybody else. I just knew that I was going to complete my goal, and I didn't care when. I mean, that was part of my drive. I think that might have been pushed back a little bit was you can't give yourself a timeline for this because you have no idea. This guy who's an expert in the field is saying it's never going to happen. So anything that if you were to like play that if you did that, you've already proven him wrong. So that's good. So you can't really say, well, I'm going to play at the level I used to play, or I'm going to play, in 6 months. I'm giving myself 6 months, which is very funny and very interesting, because at my very first physical therapy appointment, I don't know if I ever even told you this, at my very first physical therapy appointment, right after they had reattached my fingers and reattached everything, and I was in this just ridiculous looking, like cyborg looking metal thing around my hands, my physical therapist, who wasn't my physical therapist after this because I said I will never go back to this person, she said, oh, so you're a musician, huh? I said, yeah. So she's, we got to talking and whatever, and I told her I played the marimba, and she goes, oh, you know what, I have a girlfriend who's getting married in like 3 weeks, and she needs some music. Could you come play some music? Yeah. It took everything in my power not to take my cyborg hand and chop her down. But anyway, yeah, suffice it to say, I didn't go see that therapist anymore. But the main thing was I stayed with my drive, and my passion for music has been, from the time I was a kid, talking about earlier when I had all these musical influences growing up between my parents and my brothers, and listening to every style of music known to man. It was in my blood. It was in my soul. I tried to think, well, maybe I should give up because this is a big, big hill to climb. And then I started to think, where in my lifetime, where in my journey, where would I see myself not having music? And I thought about it and I thought, never. You're gonna have to do it at some point. And it's like, okay, so I'm just gonna do it. And I was young-ish at the time that this happened, so I knew that my body was gonna heal faster than it would say now. So I just made sure that what can I do to stay positive. And I'm not gonna say there wasn't some dark moments in there. There was plenty of dark moments, but um, you just have to keep telling yourself that there's a reason why you're doing this. And the reason is, I got to play music again. Yes, it was proving my doctor wrong, but mostly it was because I needed to get back to the thing that makes me happiest. When I play, I'm happy. When I'm in that groove, when I'm playing that pocket, playing some swing, playing some funk, playing some shuffles, whatever, playing some marimba, playing timpani, playing crash cymbal, snare drum, that's like, go to your happy place. That is my happy place. I count on music for basically everything. If I'm having a bad day at work, I know that the minute I pick up a pair of drumsticks, all of that tension goes out of my body. I don't have to play and get rid of the tension. And it's like my brain has been trained that the minute I grab something that's of the percussion nature, I relax. And I think it's added more years than it's going to subtract. That's for sure.
Very cool. And for anybody who wants to know the story, you can schedule your tour of Mercer University and Townsend School of Music and take Reddick out for dinner and maybe ask him some questions.
That's right. That's right. I'll tell you the whole story. Every gruesome no, I won't tell you the gruesome details because they're pretty bad.
Well, we're probably going to go ahead and wrap this up in a minute. I just want to give you one more opportunity. If there's anything that I haven't asked about that you want to talk about, anything you might say to the percussionists in the state, this is just your chance to whatever you want to end your interview with. The floor is yours.
Okay. Basically, all I want to do is just, percussion is a fraternity. And every year we talk about the Percussive Arts Society, and we talk about the Percussive Arts Society International Convention. If you're not a member of PAS, get on it. Get there, be part of this fraternity. This fraternity is great. It's amazing. I've made some great friends around the world through PAS. I've got to talk to industry insiders. Some of my heroes. One of my greatest PAS memories was having a 5-minute conversation with Vinnie Colaiuta. He couldn't pick me out of a lineup now, but I know that I talked to him. He's like one of my musical heroes. And I got to shake hands and talk with Steve Gadd for a few minutes, and I got to, have a little conversation with Evelyn Glennie, and just like some of your people that you look up to and the people that you study and you play their pieces, they're right there for you. Get involved, get with a teacher. A lot of times, I've noticed that in my years here in Georgia, I've noticed that a lot of people will get a percussion teacher 3 or 4 weeks before all state auditions. And then the minute those auditions are over, they peace out. They go away. And then next year, they're sure going to call you when it's that time for auditions again. And I think it's one of those things that percussion, it's important enough to, if you really want to do it, obviously, but if it's something that you're passionate about, which those all-state kids, obviously you are, because you want to do it and you want to play in those groups, get yourself a teacher. There's lots of us out there. And there's lots of really great ones out there. There's hundreds, if not thousands, in the state of Georgia alone. So, seek the opportunity out to get a teacher and learn something more than what you might learn on the radio. Not that that's bad, because that's where you start. The passion starts there, but then the craft and the technique of it goes through a teacher to where you can bolster your own thing and make it better. I would say support live music, but there's not much live music out there now. And so I can't really say support live music right now, but as soon as it's safe to do so, I say, as much as you can, go support live music. If you have friends that are playing a gig somewhere, go support it. That's one of the things that I really do love about Mercer is When we were non-COVID, we have, I want to say it's over 150 performances a year at the university. You don't have to pay a nickel. Go watch them. Is it going to be the same level as the Snarky Puppies and this and that? Maybe not, but it might be. And you're getting to see it for free, and you're getting yourself enriched. And I mean, just yeah. So for all my drummer friends out there, I mean, I hope that I've inspired you to do something. And please look me up. I'm at Mercer. I'm on Facebook and all that stuff. So look forward to talking to anybody about anything. It's just great. It's all peace. It's all love. It's all drumming. So yeah. And again, Andrew, thank you so much for this opportunity. This is fantastic to get to talk to you in a little bit more formal setting than when we've had our conversations in the past. But nonetheless, it's always a pleasure to get to see you and talk to you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We'll definitely have links for any of the Mercer pages for you. You'll be tagged here. So anybody watching or listening, you'll be able to find Dr. Reddick if you want to chat him up or ask about Mercer. I know you've done private lessons because that's how we met. So if people want to reach out and say, hey, I like a little bit of everything, maybe you're the guy to help me out. We'll have all the links there so people can find you.
Awesome. That sounds great.
All right. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out and chat for a little while. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We do, of course, have more interviews coming. We'll be launching even more stuff from the PAS Georgia page here. We're looking at also getting ready to do some other social media out there, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, a little bit of everything just so we can all connect. Like you said, this is a fraternity. We're all friends here, more than I think maybe any other instrument. Percussionists and drummers, we're just a good hang. So we're going to be broadening that more and more. Make sure you follow the page here so you can find out about that kind of stuff. We'll have some educational content coming up as well with the interviews. Other than that, everybody keep safe, keep practicing, and we'll see you again soon. Sweet. That's a wrap.
There it is.
I guess.